Hey, welcome to the series of everything you need to know about Python in simplest possible way. In the series of pattern printing, so far we have discussed so many patterns, and in this video we will be seeing this particular pattern and how we can solve this particular pattern printing problem using for loop, string concatenation, and also using string multiplication. If you don't know about string concatenation and string multiplication, you can watch my first video about pattern printing where I have explained clearly about string concatenation and string multiplication. So having said that, let us go ahead and see how we can solve this particular pattern printing problem. So to solve this particular pattern, first I will be taking a rows variable, and in this rows variable I will be taking 5 value because we have the rows of 5. So for that reason I am taking 5 rows here. So later what we will be doing is that here if you would carefully observe, we have two different kind of spaces. One is outer spaces which are of these. Without these spaces, we cannot actually print this particular pattern. And another spaces is inside of these patterns, these spaces. So to keep track of these spaces, I will mention outer spaces, which is of these spaces before actually starting this pattern. So in this space, outer spaces, what I will be mentioning is that I will mention 0 because in the first row, I don't have any spaces. For that reason, I am mentioning outer spaces as 0. So for inner spaces, I am taking a variable as inner spaces. In these inner spaces, what I will be doing is that we are not considering these two rows to keep track of these inner spaces because whatever the value is giving, these two rows does not having any inner spaces. For that reason, I will take the inner spaces from this second row. So to take these inner spaces, we need to observe carefully. One thing is that here we are having 5 positions. Out of these 5 positions, one position is occupied by outer space and another two positions are occupied by these stars. So for that reason, what I will be doing is that I will take this as how many number of rows that we are having minus 3. So one for this outer space and another two for this particular specific stars here. So for that reason, I am taking rows minus 3. So later we will generate this particular pattern using for loop and range. So for that reason, I will using this for loop for I in range. By using this range function, we can actually generate range of values. So now we want the range of values from rows till 0. On each iteration I wanted to reduce it with 1, so for that reason I have mentioned 1. So by mentioning this range function with rows 0 minus 1, we will be generating a range of values from 5 to 1. So if in the for loop, what I will be doing is that I will mention a condition. So whatever the condition is that I equal to 1, I am mentioning if the I is equal to 1, which is of this particular value. So and or I am mentioning or and I equal to how many number of rows that we are having. If this particular condition is true, if I equal to first row and or I equal to of this last row, any of these conditions is true, at that time what we will be doing is that we will be first printing these outer spaces, right? So in the first row we don't have any outer spaces, but in the last row we have these outer spaces. So for that reason, first we will be mentioning outer spaces multiplied with outer spaces, and these outer spaces are concatenating with what we are having these stars. So for that reason I am taking a star here. So this star will be multiplied with this particular I. So in the first row we have 5 stars, right? So by simply mentioning a single star, we don't get those particular stars. For that reason, I am mentioning as I. So by mentioning as I, based on this particular iteration of I equal to 1 or I equal to how many number of rows, that will be replaced with I. So for that reason, I have mentioned I. After printing this particular statement, what I will be doing is that outer outer spaces outer spaces, these are the outer spaces, right? So on each iteration we need to increment these outer spaces. For that reason, I am mentioning outer spaces plus equal to 1. By mentioning outer spaces plus equal to 1, we will increment these spaces on each iteration. So for that reason only I am mentioning outer spaces plus equal to 1. So if this condition is not true, if we are having the rows are not the first row or not the last row. At that time, what we will be doing? So for that, I am mentioning an else block. In this else block, what we are printing is that first we need to print these outer spaces, right? So on each row we have outer spaces. For that reason, I will take a space and I will multiply these spaces with outer spaces. So, and later what I will be doing is that I will take this star and concatenate this star with outer spaces. Here we are taking only single star because we are getting only single star on each row. So for that reason I am taking a single star and I am concatenating this single star with inner spaces. So on each row we have these inner spaces, right? For that reason I will take a space here and I will multiply this space with inner spaces. So later what I will be doing is that I am concatenating these inner spaces with another star which is of this. So by mentioning this inner spaces with concatenating the stars, we can actually generate this kind of a pattern. So after printing this, what I need to do is that I need to increment this particular outer spaces on each iteration. For that reason, I have mentioned outer spaces plus equal to 1. So along with this, what we need to do is that we need to keep track of these inner spaces. If you see these inner spaces on each iteration, these inner spaces are being reduced by 1. In the second row, we have 2 spaces. The third row, we will be having 1 space. If the number of rows will be increased, this particular inner spaces will be decreased. So for that reason, I am mentioning inner spaces minus equal to 1. So if I execute this, I can able to get the exact pattern that what we have expected above. So I hope you have understood this particular logic. If not, let me explain one more time for you. So here in the first line, we have taken rows to keep track how many number of rows we wanted. So after that, we have identified spaces of outer spaces of these and inner spaces of which are between of these stars. To keep track of them, we have taken two different spaces which is of outer spaces variable and inner spaces variable. So after that we are iterating through a range of values from how many number of rows we are having to 1. So by using this range function and this for loop. So in the for loop what we are mentioning is that we are mentioning a condition if the iteration I is first or the iteration is last. So which is of this first or this last, if these values are true, at that time we will be entering this iteration block, this condition block, and first we will be printing these outer spaces which are of this without before actually this pattern is starting these particular spaces, and these spaces are multiple. After that we will be printing this particular star with how many iterations that we are doing. So after completion of this print statement we are incrementing these outer spaces as we are as the pattern is increased the spaces on each iteration. So if this condition is not true, if we are not getting first row or we are not getting last row, at that time what we will be doing is that we will be first printing these outer spaces because we have outer spaces here. So after that we are printing a single star because in the pattern we are getting only single star. After that we are mentioning a inner space to keep track of this inner spaces in between these stars, and at last we are printing a single star. So after printing of this particular statement what we are doing is that we are incrementing these outer spaces because on each iteration these outer spaces are being incremented. So after that we are decrementing this particular inner spaces because in between of these stars these inner spaces are decreased by 1 on each iteration. Now I hope you can able to understand this logic. So now what we will be doing is that we will take input from the user dynamically. For that reason I will using int input enter any number. By using this int, we are actually taking the integer input. By using this input, we are taking input from the user. If I execute this, it was showing enter any number. If I give 5 here, I am getting the actual pattern that what we have expected. So if I give one more number, let's say I am giving 10 here. So I can able to get the similar pattern with the similar pattern with this number. So if I give one more number, let's say I am giving 13, so I can able to see the same pattern with the 13 also. Like this we can generate this kind of a pattern with any number given by the user. So now I hope you can able to understand this. So in the next video, what we will be doing is that we will try to print this particular pattern with same for loop, string concatenation and string multiplication. If you can able to write the solution for this, write the solution and put your solution in the comment section. Anyway, we will discuss the solution in the next video. To keep updated, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications to all. So whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. So having said that, if you have understood, if you have found this video interesting, hit the like button and thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.